Hello and welcome back to my channel, a place where we try to concisely, well, let's say, as concisely as I possibly can, document all the Nintendo products I've collected, from the incredibly famous to the less well-known and definitely obscure. Today on episode 95 we will be looking at an iconic system, and a truly noteworthy console, that would be Nintendo's first ever interchangeable cartridge game offering they'd ever release. This follows the previously reviewed range of color TV computer game systems, for which we had 5 in total, but remember that these did not offer the games separately from the base unit console. Episodes 7 to episode 10.5, or 10.5 cover these early 70s proto-consoles. Interestingly, Nintendo's Family Computer, or Famicom, was offered for sale during a very turbulent time for what would become the first generation games consoles. Whilst America was in the midst of the catastrophic video game crash of 1983, Japan was actually isolated and largely unaffected and about to begin a video games boom. During this period the US had gone full steam ahead with consoles, whilst Europe had gone down the home computer route. Japan had not chosen a path yet, but the release of the Famicom would soon change that. Nintendo had seen success in the arcades with the likes of Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong, and now wanted to take the next step and give its customers a chance to bring a piece of the arcade experience home with the Famicom to its home domestic market in Japan and related region, being released in 1983. The Famicom was designed to be both cheap and impressive. Nintendo aimed to be thrifty where possible but did not want to sacrifice performance. The aim was for their console to be unsurpassed in terms of quality and cost-effectiveness by their competitors for at least a year, if not longer. The console was purposefully designed to look like a toy, with a design scheme similar to the Game & Watch series of portable games they have released a couple of years prior to the Famicom. This design would be completely revised when it was released as the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America 2 years later. So, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'd like to reveal the answer to the last episode's picture quiz question, which was episode 94, in our regular episode friendly competition, which we like to call What in the World? And, the answer was guessed correctly by one of our wonderful viewers. The viewer, who goes by the YouTube name of PacoPapa02, correctly identified this partial image as the box art to the 3DS Pokemon XY console. Which was pretty amazing, and only goes to impress me even more with their Nintendo gaming knowledge and prowess. A huge shout out to you. The console came complete with 2 distinctive controllers, both of which were sadly fixed and hardwired into the machine, which limited both distance from the TV display and any ability to find a comfortable playing position. This design choice was further problematic, considering the fact that if a controller broke, the unit becomes effectively unserviceable without a repair. This limitation was acted upon for the renamed US console in America, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, which Nintendo engineers ensured were detachable. Another notable difference between the Japanese and American controllers, is that the second Japanese controller on the Famicom has a microphone, as opposed to start and select buttons found on the NES. Sadly, this innovative microphone was rarely made use of, but one example of its usage is the Japanese version of Legend of Zelda. In it the enemy, Pole's voice, can actually be killed by sitting in your lounge yelling into the microphone of the second controller. While this innovation likely had potential but was ultimately unfulfilled. Upon its launch in July of 1983, the Famicom sold steadily. Launch titles were robust and popular themes, such as Donkey Kong, which was just about as safe a bet title as one could wish for at that time, as it was a top-tier arcade port. Donkey Kong Jr. as well as Popeye were some of the other games. Popeye being released for the Famicom was somewhat ironic, as the original arcade version of Donkey Kong had been based off Popeye, but due to licensing issues Nintendo had been unable to use the characters of Popeye, Olive Oil, and Bluto. Nintendo were definitely not operating in calm waters. In point of fact, they were in turbulent and testing times. A serious problem was encountered in the run-up to the vital holiday season of 1983. There were many reports of Famicom systems freezing during gameplay. This revelation was a potential death knell for the fledgling games console. Nintendo investigated and discovered this was due to a faulty circuit in the first batch of early produced systems, and so they decided to be perhaps equally reckless and brave at the same time, and ordered a full recall of every Famicom system, while concurrently stopping all production until the issue was completely fixed. This actually cost Nintendo huge amounts of money, in both lost sales, along with the logistics of replacing recalled Famicom units, but in many ways it worked out well for them. Their swift and decisive decision to fix this issue, and take full responsibility, much to the detriment of profits, helped project a trustworthy and caring image which would help the company dominate Japan for decades to come. At this time in Japan the only direct competition to the Famicom was Sega's SG-1000, which the Famicom was easily outselling. In fact, Within 2 years of its launch, the Famicom had already sold 2.5 million units in Japan. This success emboldened Nintendo, who started to look towards international markets. They contacted Atari, who were at the time the best-known video game console company in the United States. A deal was initially thrashed out for Atari to market the Famicom in North America as the Nintendo Enhanced Video System, with the NEVS abbreviated letters not sitting on the tongue, as well as the subsequently now famous NES. Atari then got into a bitter dispute with Nintendo. Talks stalled upon witnessing that their main rival, ColecoVision, had a version of Donkey Kong already selling in North America. Genuinely concerned that Nintendo were playing both sides, working with their competitor and nemesis, the deal looked dead, even before it could get started. This, however, was not the case, but by the time the issue was cleared up, the North American video game crash had arrived in full force and sadly left Atari unable to financially follow through with the original deal, even if it still wanted it. Nintendo was still focused on their desire to keep their new console relevant after launch, but during this period technology was moving fast. To maintain their lead over the competition, Nintendo engineers designed and built the Famicom Disk System, a complementary bolt-on device which would enable games developers to make cheaper games and also allow players to reuse the discs, thanks to the rewritable nature of the media type. Despite a huge development push, marketing campaigns and what was then seen as cutting-edge advancements, Nintendo still needed to ring-fence highly desirable new titles, such as The Legend of Zelda, Metroid and Kid Icarus to initially Famicom Disk System exclusives. Even so, the peripheral was not the runaway success Nintendo had envisaged. It was plagued by further reliability issues, and after a few years the benefits it offered, more storage space and cheaper games, had effectively ceased to exist, as memory prices dropped and cartridges subsequently became larger and less costly. Therefore, in an unplanned development, the standalone Famicom once again became Nintendo's primary focus, and 1988's Super Mario Bros. 3, arguably the biggest title on the format, was only available on traditional cartridge. But Nintendo would not be Nintendo without trying out multiple peripheries, strange new gizmos and bizarre yet flamboyant add-ons, that were just as ahead of the available technology, as they were ahead of even their customers' demands. Take a wearable 3D headset, perhaps a common enough sight in today's Ready Player One gaming world, but back in the day was simply pure sci-fi. But did that stop Nintendo designing a unit and making a prototype and even selling a finished retail model? Absolutely not. Was it any good? Actually, it kinda was. It actually spawned 7 unique games, which if we're being honest were all better than the later released Virtual Boy and even more impressively better than the decades later cardboard monstrosity, Labo VR. But the fact a Famicom 3D headset was issued only further underscores the fact Nintendo knew where they wanted to go, and where they thought the industry was headed. The family computer would not be complete without a traditional full-sized keyboard, color-coded to match the Famicom system. The peripheral was an early addition and designed to allow the Famicom to function as a basic home computer. This was coupled to a tape deck recorder, again color matched to the family computer, with this accessory being the main way data could be recorded and stored, as archaic as that might sound to our modern ears. Add the original Famicom-themed Rob the Robot, that we'd come to love with the Nintendo Entertainment System, and a Smith & Wesson-inspired 6-shooter version of what we'd later call the Zapper light gun, and it's clear to see what Nintendo aimed to do with their game systems from the inception, both here with this 80s offering, and through to today with the latest version of their gaming console, the Switch 2. And that just about wraps up this quick review of Nintendo's iconic Famicom. So once again it's that time in our episode where we ask the trivia question, what in the world? Can you identify this Nintendo object from the limited cropped image you see here? If you can, feel free to just drop a comment in the section below, and for all you brave folk, willing to hazard a guess, good luck, and best wishes. Thank you for watching and sharing your time with me today. The next episode will see us unwrap the next system Nintendo gifted us, so until then take care, be safe and see you all back here soon.